Record. So, welcome to Pax Europiana, the podcast about peace and prosperity. We have now a very special guest, and I'm very honored, Ejup Qerimi, who was serving a long time, over 40 years, in very important positions of the Kosovo economy, among them as the Secretary General of the Chamber of Commerce of Kosovo, and also served on several public enterprises, the pension fund, public and post, and many other positions, and is a very knowledgeable expert about Kosovo's economic history. I welcome you very much, and I'm happy that you joined the show this morning. And please let me allow you to introduce yourself, and please then we discuss the history of the Republic of Kosovo in the last 40 years together. Welcome, Ejup. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Günther. Thank you for inviting me for this interview. I'm happy to contribute and to do that. I'm an engineer by profession, but mostly I was engaged in managerial positions, in top managerial positions during, let's say, 40 years from now. I used to work in the battery factory in Jilin as a general manager, as a production manager. Then also I was in charge in Kosovo Chamber of Commerce as a CEO or Secretary General of Kosovo Chamber of Commerce. Then I served in the pension fund in the board of directors. Then as a CEO of Post and Telecom of Kosovo, and some other bodies in not so permanent positions. I'm familiar with the Kosovo economy, of course, because I was around serving in different positions, as I mentioned, and ready to answer to your questions, and even ready to contribute in future your projects.
Thanks a lot, Ejup. That's very interesting, and you're the perfect man for this interview. I'm very happy that you took time.
Thank you.
And let me take you back now in the times of Yugoslavia. And the question is about industrialization of Yugoslavia. And did Kosovo also get some major industrial projects? How was the structure? Was Kosovo well invested? Because the first time I saw it in 2002, the situation was quite, there was not a lot. Yeah? But your experience, was the industrialization in Kosovo? What's your take on that?
Yes, of course. Yugoslavia was a country which was constituted by 6 republics and 2 autonomous regions. It was a pretty modern country in that time because it was a special economic system in place. It was socialistic economic system, but very much in good links with Western countries, with European countries in that time, and also with US, with the intention to to have technologies from Western countries and to have markets in other regions like ex-Soviet Union, countries in the Middle East and in Africa, because Yugoslavia, in terms of politics and policies in that time, it was in so-called non-aligned countries, not part of the Warsaw Pact, not part of the NATO. It was a kind of special movement. They call themselves non-aligned, and they use this non-aligned alliance of countries to find markets and to sell products which are mostly products from the technologies which are both in Germany, in Austria, in Western countries, and in US. For my point of view, it was a very good policy. I mean, they had the markets in other regions and markets for qualitative technologies in Western regions. So in that time, Kosovo was the autonomous region, part of Yugoslav Federation. It was of course, the poorest region, but it was also part of the overall planned economy of ex-Yugoslavia. Some of the industrial facilities were also in place in Kosovo, especially was developed Mitrovica because of the mines which were there, and they were exploited. And then some of the final products or factories which produce the final products from the mines in Mitrovica were placed in regions all over Kosovo, like in Peja battery factory, in Gjilan battery factory, in Prizren, other factories, or in Jakova, but mostly linked with the Trepča mines. We had also power plants because of the lignite resources, lignite mines, which are close to Pristina. But in overall, it was a poorest and a less developed region in ex-Yugoslavia.
Let me ask you about your personal experience as a manager of a battery factory in Gjilan. Did you have international customers? Were you fully integrated in the Yugoslavian economy? What was your experience?
Yes, yes, this was a company, part of the Trepča conglomerate. I mean, this is how the program of the batteries, it was so-called nickel-cadmium rechargeable batteries program. Because some of the metals which are used in this factory, they were mined and smelted in Mitrovica. But some others, other metals which were not in the market in Kosovo, they were from Canada or from Russia, from Soviet Union. We were fully integrated in the Yugoslav system because the exports and imports were done by the companies from Belgrade, and as it was designed, the system, economic system in that time. And the exports were for mostly ex-Soviet Union and Middle East and other mostly neighboring countries, and also the internal market in Yugoslavia, which was not small in that time, because Yugoslavia was a country with 22 million people. I mean, and even the Yugoslav market was quite substantial for our company.
So Ejup, in this time from 65 to about 87, 88, yeah, there was a normal economic life as well possible in Kosovo. Can you describe a bit? You had partners, business partners in Croatia, in Serbia, everywhere. It was possible to trade. How was the situation to work there?
It was a system which was functional. I mean, the Yugoslav system was functional in terms of economic cooperation between republics or the constituents of Yugoslavia. But I mean, because of some political, I mean, let's say, not well managed political situation, the situation starting from 90s, let's say 90s, not 1990s, but from 90s, then it was some eruption in political terms, especially nationalism. There was some republics which had changed their policies, and then it was a death of the leader of Yugoslavia, the leader of Communistic Party, Tito. Then things start to fall apart. I mean, nobody was a real leader, and the leaders of the republics, they tried to influence others with using the oppression, using the power of the Yugoslav army, not in equal basis, but in basis like Serbia was more influential with Yugoslav army, then other republics didn't agree, and they start some clashes, even wars, like in short war in Slovenia, when Slovenia broke apart, then in Croatia and Bosnia, and finally ended up with Kosovo.
Let me first take you back to this important year 88 and 89. There was the opening, the fall of the Cold War, the end of the Cold War, the fall of Berlin, and also in Yugoslavia there were many changes. And Milosevic, he took power in Serbia, and he made all these visits to Kosovo, then all this nationalistic platform. And how was the economic life impacted in Kosovo then in these years 88 to 90? What happened then to you personally, and how was the economic system disintegrating?
Because of these wrong policies and this nationalistic, let's say, behavior of the leaders like Milosevic, and the force they used against the citizens of Yugoslavia, which we were, I mean, the Kosovars, we were citizens of Yugoslavia. We were paying taxes, we were serving the army, even myself, let's say my father, even my grandfather were serving the Yugoslavia, and suddenly they came with the policies that we don't belong to these countries. We have to be expelled with force and by some atrocities which were not seen in the near history. And if these kind of policies take place, we cannot talk even anything about economy, because economy immediately collapsed. I mean, especially in Kosovo, because they were taking over the companies by integrating them with companies in Serbia by force, by some moves which were outlaw, which was not even based in any law or any economic reasoning. And this is how during, let's say, 10 years, those companies didn't manage to have new technologies. And if you don't have in the economy new technologies, then you lose the market. If you lose the market, then you go down. I mean, the companies go towards bankruptcy, and almost all the companies were non-officially bankrupted, but in reality they were bankrupted. And people start to, our people, especially people in Kosovo, we start to confront these policies with organizing ourselves in so-called parallel institutions, because they took over even the school system, even the physical infrastructure like schools. They didn't allow the students or pupils from Albanian nationality to enter in those spaces. And we had to go with alternatives, which was to build a parallel system of schooling in private houses, which was a clear confrontation with the policies of Serbia and Milosevic. Then we start also to do some private economy, because in 1990s it was allowed a private initiative, and people somehow were expelled from the ex factories as a and they had to find themselves in the economy, in the so-called market economy, which was trying to be established from 90s and on. and which was also good experience, I think, from point of economic behavior, not from point of well-being or welfare. I mean, but from a point of how to change, not to rely on the factories, big factories, but to find yourself in the market, in doing anything just to survive. It was a really real experience which people found themselves, and this is maybe also why people in Kosovo now are more somehow let's say useful in market economy. They try to find easy themselves in this new environment.
Let me ask you, because I knew about the parallel system for schooling, and it was in this Kosovo apartheid time from in the 90s. But what happened actually with the publicly owned companies? Who was managing them and who was working them? Was it still allowed for Kosovo Albanians to manage those companies, or was it then were they working there, or were they all simply fired?
Most of them, they are mostly simply fired. But and also the management is replaced. They were all replaced by the Serbian people. I mean, and those companies, as I told you, all of them had old technologies. They were producing, but not really profiting. They were just producing losses. And they were going in the bankruptcy, but not officially. I mean, because there was no law on bankruptcy, and the bankruptcy as a process was not conducted at all. They were just living like, I mean, not really dying, but they close to be dying as a economic entities. I mean, but the system had to keep them alive with very high inflation. I mean, this is also important to mention. There was so high inflation in that time. Just for you to I'll try to describe. They were introducing once the new dinar, and it was when the central bank of Yugoslavia introduced new dinar. When it came to Gilan, in my it was worthless. I mean, the new one just was coming from let's say from Belgrade to Gilan. Then we had some papers. We were all in the streets. Nobody was, and it was a new dinar. So it was very interesting in terms of experience. I mean, experiencing this inflation. Now I very well understand what is inflation, how it destroys the economy, how it destroys the business. Many businesses which didn't use the hard currency like a German mark, they just disappeared because their goods were not, they were bought with dinars which were tomorrow worthless. I mean, then people had to close their small businesses. Mostly there was people who were in trade, in retail, with groceries, and which didn't manage to sell their products with German mark.
That was quite a terrible combination of factors. So all the Albanians kicked out of the state-owned companies, and also then the inflation, extreme inflation, hyperinflation. It was very terrible. I saw once a 5 billion dinar bill. It's kind of incredible. And then
we were all billionaires in that time. We had billions of dinars in our hands with a lot of zeros.
Let me ask you.
I was doing computer programming in that time. I was working as a computer programmer and specialized in finance. And when I was doing the reports from the computer program, it was so many zeros that I couldn't put the report in A4 format because of the zeros. I put the mark like with asterisks with a few zeros on top. Then I had to to produce a report saying that when you read the numbers, go up and check, add some 6 or 9 zeros.
Crazy,
So
crazy. Let me ask you, you were first the manager of the battery factory. Were you also fired during that policy, or what happened?
I was working in the battery factory as a production manager in that time, from 1984 to 1992. I was in that factory. Most of the people were fired, and then personally, I was not fired. Personally, I was not fired, but I left the company by my initiative as a reaction or as a confrontation to the regime. And they wanted me in the company because I was a computer programmer, and I was also the production manager. So they couldn't replace me because I was for the training in United States where we bought the technology, and it was no man who will just replace me. So I was okay. I was good for for the regime, but then I left because I wanted to work for a private company.
So you started then as a software engineer privately, and
Yes,
that was
yes. I
what
was
many.
doing computer.
Let me ask you also, did many people from the Kosovo Albanians, what did they do in these difficult times? How did they survive when there was no
Um,
public employment possible? How to live? What was done?
the, the privatization, the private sector, let's say, started in 1990s. This was in 1990, and this was a chance for the people who left the publicly owned company or who were fired from the publicly owned company. Some specialists, they joined, or they start their own business, and some others, they go some they were which were not so qualified, or so they usually they worked in the fields like agriculture, because people used to have some land, and they went and doing some agricultural business. I mean, they just maintain their land, doing some uh, uh, production, but just to survive. I mean, and also some people went abroad. Some people went abroad, like in Switzerland, Austria, Italy, Germany. Most of them in Germany. This is why the Kosovo has big diaspora, and especially people who had to serve the army. The people of age of 18, they fled or they go abroad before they receive the invitation to go to serve the army, because serving the Yugoslav army in that time meant you have to serve army fighting in Slovenia for Serbia, fighting in Croatia for Serbia in the name of Yugoslav army, and in Bosnia. So this is why most of the people in very organized way, they just sent abroad in Western countries, and now most of them, they are there. I mean, now they are 30 years there. I mean, 20 and more than 30 years in Western countries.
So there was a lot of subsistence farming and a lot of remittances also from the
Yes.
diaspora.
Yes, this is how the people lived. I mean, most they received the remittances, part of the money which the people in we call so-called diaspora sent there, and they also, it's a matter of mentality. I mean, because we are still, but in that time we were very much linked with the family. I mean, if someone went abroad, it was a big shame if he didn't send money to his family, because now is not the same. It changed, but in that time, if someone is abroad and not sending money to the family, everybody will know that he's not sending money. He's useless, but they were hardworking people, mostly working in the construction sector in Germany and in Switzerland, Austria. Then some of them in Slovenia, Italy. So this is how, I mean, it was kind of combination of these activities, and people survived, I mean, in economical terms.
Then came 98 and the start of the Liberation War, 99 then the NATO intervention, and then came the Liberation Day in June 99, a big day of joy, but also there was a lot of destruction and it was very difficult. Can you describe how this situation was during the war, and also then how the reconstruction started in 99?
Yes. First, having, especially for international community and I mean democratic community in Western countries and US, they were following and being, let's say, part of the wars which were conducted in Yugoslavia, like in Slovenia, Croatia, and Bosnia. And because we were the last one, I mean, to have this conflict, the international community were well aware and well informed what's going on, because they learned the lessons from previous war conflicts in ex-Yugoslavia. And then this is why I think they intervened, because they were prepared, and also their governments, like in US and governments of NATO countries, they were more democratic, more informed, and then they intervened here to stop the very big humanitarian crisis, because the policies of Serbia and Milosevic as their leader was to expel people from their homeland. I mean, from, as I told you, I was in generations serving the same country. Then suddenly you are not a part of the country. Even if I come to Austria today and live 5 years in Austria, I receive some, or I become not a citizen, but maybe I become I have a permit to live and work in Austria. But as I described, many generations people were living, serving, even serving, paying taxes, and suddenly the policy was very, I mean, bad policy, expelling people abroad. And this is why not only expelling, but they did this with atrocities, like killing them, beating them, jailing them for many years. I mean, we have people like Adem Demaci he was jailed 28 years. So like Mandela, the same. And because of that, the international community intervened and stopped this humanitarian crisis, which was unique. I mean, because they didn't follow all, let's say, rules which were until then in international legislation, but they wanted to create a peace in Western Balkans and make people living in their homeland, not going abroad as refugees, which resulted with the intervention of NATO, and which was for 78 days was air campaign of NATO countries against Yugoslavia. In that time, it was still Yugoslavia, but in reality, it was Serbia and Montenegro. But Montenegro immediately declared that they are not going to confront NATO forces. Then it was only Serbia, and they in 1999 they just declared that they are surrendering, and they had to flee from Kosovo with their army forces and to let NATO forces and humanitarian agencies coming in and creating the secure environment and making the possibilities real that people which were refugees come back. What was interesting in that time, it was that the people went back or came back from even New Zealand or Canada or America, or even much easier from the Western countries of Europe, of European Union, which was very interesting. I was surprised that they are coming in such a short term, because they were linked with their homeland. Personally, I was not a refugee. I was in Kosovo, in Gilan, just following the situation and waiting for being expelled in Macedonia or in Albania, or following. Okay, I was doing also some my activities through internet. I was not a fighter of KLA, but I was doing through sending emails, communicating with people in the United States, writing some articles. So this was my personal fight, which was not very much valuated, but okay, I did my my part.
Everybody has to help what he can at this moment. It was very difficult. Let me ask you about the economic situation, because it must have been very terrible. Over 1 million people expelled. They were chased towards Albania, Macedonia, and the economy basically came to a standstill in this moment. Yeah. How was it for the people, for the families? How could they live, and how did they survive the war? Also, I heard that many people, they were simply having to live in the forest, or they were living under very complicated conditions. Can you describe?
Yeah, 1998, 1999 was very difficult years. There were so-called war years for Kosovars, and most of them, they were expelled from their houses by the so-called, in military terms, so-called burned land, because military forces were just burning the villages and bombarding them. The people had to flee, and where they go first, they go in the forests, in the mountains, and they lived there for months. I mean, what was supportive was that it was a March, starting, let's say, in 1999 was March, and then this so-called summer or spring-summer period is more acceptable for being outside, but it was also people who suffered from freezing, from not having what to eat, from moving from one part until they reached the borders. Then mostly the borders were towards Montenegro, which was not very friendly. Then Albania, which was friendly borders. If you enter Albania, then it was under this humanitarian organization and the government of Albania protectorate, let's say, and people also going towards Macedonia, which also was a friendly environment. People were settled in the camps built by humanitarian and government organizations, and they were deported in different countries as refugees. So this was a tough and very hard situation. In the way back, or when they came back, most of the houses were destroyed. We have some numbers: 120,000 houses were burned, and people, when they came, they start to rebuild with the help of humanitarian organizations. But mostly, this is also important to know, that mostly they built by themselves, because if we check the numbers, which are reported by the humanitarian and government organizations, is not so big. People start to rebuild their houses by themselves and by the support from diaspora. Again, diaspora did their great support, sending money for buying the construction materials, and people then rebuilt their houses even bigger and better than they had before. I mean, because if you build the new houses, you use new materials, more space, and but it was very, very tough for, and people suffered a lot, but this is how it happens.
So when it comes to the war, what do you estimate? Because there's also a debate that NATO intervention itself destroyed some of the infrastructure in Kosovo and some of the police buildings. But can you describe the amount of the Serbian army directly destroying house by house of the Kosovo Albanian population? Because to assess the damage a bit, what was the situation in June 1999?
In June 99, personally, I remember very well. I was to have this picture because I was here and I knew about the damages and happened in the cities. I went personally in the tour in all cities of Kosovo, and I went in Mitrovica, in Peja, in Đakovo, and in Prizren, and in Gjilan. So I made a round, let's say, tour, and I saw myself a lot of destruction. I mean, also in cities, and most of them were done by the military forces of Serbia or ex-Yugoslavia. Very little by the NATO, because NATO was bombarding only some military facilities of ex-Yugoslavia in Kosovo, and the rest was bombardment went towards Serbian, the military facilities in Serbian territory. But mostly the houses were burned with the start of military bombardment. Then they had also support from paramilitary troops, which were then they went inside the villages for looting. They wanted some TV sets, some refrigerators, and they were collecting all that and selling then back in Serbia. So it was kind of combination military forces start the bombardment and people flee, then the paramilitary forces enter and do some killings if they found someone who is resisting or who is not willing to go. They did. I have the case from my village where I am from, which is name of the village is Žegra. The paramilitary forces, when they entered with some 5 buses, they killed a teacher. They killed some 8 people in that day. I mean, people who were not in hurry or being confused of going out of the village. I mean, even not confronting or refusing, but they were just confused. They don't know what to do. They know that their home is there and they have animals to feed. They had, and some people which were just around or just behaving that they don't want to leave, they were killed by the paramilitary forces. Forces which were, no one knows who were they. I mean, but they were protected by the and not confronted by the government. They were just let to do their part of the job.
So these were forces like Arkan is so famous, infamous.
Yes, they were different. Yes,
some kind of
different.
militias. They came to destroy houses and also commit this
and do looting. Mostly they were interested about looting. Because I saw personally myself, I saw the trucks full of old TV sets and these things, which were even anyhow worthless. I mean, they were not, but the mentality of those people is that they want to have something from the war. I mean, they want to earn.
So they went
fighting.
into private houses and took the household goods out of these
Yes.
places, brought them
Yes.
back to their houses in Serbia.
No, even they sold them in the markets.
Oh, okay. Let me ask you, Ejup, also about the publicly owned companies, like, for example, this battery factory or other of the Trepča complex. Yeah? How did they go through the war? What happened to the inventory, to the assets which were owned by these companies? Who took them? Were they in a good shape in 99 after the war? What happened? Were they bombed by NATO or were they looted as well? What happened to these publicly owned companies?
Most of the companies, I mean, their destruction, let's say in economical terms, started a long time ago, not only during the war. I mean, because they from 90s till 2000, some 10 years, they were forcibly merging them with the companies in Serbia. And what was valuable, they were taking over. But the most important is that all the companies they lost their value because in this period of 10 or more years, even up to 20 years, was no investments in new technologies, and all factories had technologies were almost 30 or 40 years old. And because of that, they start to lose their market in 90s, 1992, 95. So when we reached 2000 or 1999, the liberation, they were without market and without new technologies. So their value was not and some of them also were looted by the previous management. So this is a situation which I faced. I mean, because in that time, before United Nation administration was established in Kosovo, so-called UNMIC mission of United Nations, or we call it in Kosovo UNMIC administration. We had a provisional government which was in charge, and they appointed administrators in these socially owned companies or enterprises with the aim that they protect the companies from looting. And this was, as I was one of them who was in charge with battery factory in Gilan. What I did the registration of all the materials and assets which were in place, and protected from being destroyed. I mean, mostly there was intention to be looted. I mean, to be taken some machines or something, raw materials which didn't happen much. I mean, because this administration was so-called interim Kosovo government was only few months, because then came in full power or established also in all over Kosovo the United Nations administration, and then based on the resolution 1244 of United Nations, they were in charge with everything. I mean, so what they did, then they did, or they recognized those administrators which were previously appointed by the interim government of Kosovo, which was my case. I was recognized by UNMIC to continue to do the activities which I was doing, with the intention to revitalize those companies, which was not possible. Not possible because we had no funds, no investments from abroad to buy or to replace old technologies with new technologies. So this was, from my point of view, even impossible mission, because these activities needed a lot of investment, which were not in place, not from United Nations, not because the countries which supported Kosovo and United Nations, they were in first years, they were more concerned about security, about sheltering, about reconstructing the houses, and supporting people just to have their basic to fulfill their basic needs. I mean, not really developing the economy.
Let me ask you then, when liberation came on the 10th of June, a lot of the refugees who lived in the refugee camps in Macedonia, Albania, they moved back into Kosovo, and it was obviously very complicated also in a way. But can you describe the mood? Was there a mood of liberation? Was there enthusiasm despite the difficulties? How did people live at this moment in the summer '99?
It was interesting, as I said before, that people were eager to come back, and they did in very short time, which was not even advised by UNMIC or by international aid organizations, because they had to. Their plan was that to keep the people some more time in the already established camps in Albania and in Macedonia, but the people came back because they wanted they mostly because of the enthusiasm of liberation, and they wanted to rebuild their houses. I mean, they wanted to start a new life, and to this is also, from my point of view, a proof that Kosovars really like Kosovo, because instead of staying in the camps and being supported by international organizations, they just returned back. And when they returned, they had to start to rebuild, then rebuild the houses. Then we had a big presence in that time, big presence of humanitarian organizations. I think we had some 100 or more, few hundreds humanitarian organizations in place. They supported from rebuilding the houses, then supported with basic needs like food and other needs. Which went, I think, very successfully. I mean, because the international community was organized, and also it was a support of NATO, because NATO forces were in place in Kosovo, and they secured the environment. So we had a not in very first days, but after, let's say, a month, it was a whole area of Kosovo secured by NATO forces, and which was a kind of prerequisite to start to do other activities.
So that was the moment of reconstruction, basically private reconstructions. The families going back to their houses, rebuilding their lives and having security, freedom, but also with significant support of the international community.
Yes.
Let me ask you about the first phase of UNMIC from 2000 to 2004. How did it work, the economic reconstruction part? Because then the UNMIC took over, the EU pillar, there was a lot of effort then to systematically reconstruct and support economic governance. What was your role in that moment? And also, how do you see the progress in the beginning? It was, of course, no status clarity. It was a bit complicated. There was a question of what to do with the public-owned enterprises. So how did this period then work from 2000 to 2004?
When UNMIC was in place. I mean, and based, as I said, based on the resolution 1244 of United Nations, they were in charge. I mean, with everything from security to economic development of Kosovo. And the UNMIC administration was huge. It was some 5,000 people, I mean, in this administration, and mostly they came from different countries because it was a United Nations mission. It was people from all over the world. I mean, we had, let's say, police from in airport was police from India, or we had police from Bangladesh or from African countries. We had the police from, let's say, Finland, or so it was a very interesting organization in terms of how it was composed. And most of them, they were officials, government officials of their respective countries. And what they did when they come, they start to build a country, because they, from my point of view, I mean, they didn't know anything to do else, because they were from governments of different countries. And when they come, they start to act as a government and to build a real country, a real government with policies, with some so-called also legislation, but starting with regulations, because they didn't name them laws, because they didn't want that, because it was not their mission to build a country. It was their mission just to administer the region, the area of Kosovo. But they did through building up legislation, building up so-called interim or provisional government, even the provisional constitution of Kosovo with regulations. Regulations was laws, but not named as a law, but just a regulation. Somehow they built, or they supported Kosovars to build their countries in terms of administration and legislation, but also in rebuilding their houses, but not very much in the economy, because the companies, as I told you, needed a lot of investment, and nobody was ready in this phase of, let's say, 2000, 2004 to do such kind of investment, because it was not known what will come in the future. Is it going Kosovo to be independent country, or is it going to be under United Nations administration for many years? So it was not so clear, and this unclarity didn't allow much of investments in economy. But the European Union and US, they did also some investments, especially in the companies related to utilities like electricity, water, sewage, and other utilities which were needed for the lives of the citizens. They invested a lot of money in those companies, but not in other companies which were for other markets. I mean, not utilities. Non-utilities will just let for being privatized, or for being changed the ownership, or.
So there was a major effort towards infrastructure investment from the international community, road
Yes.
building, asphalting, water supply, energy supply. There was also a major effort of the families privately to rebuild their houses, to start some small retail business. But the whole sector of the publicly owned companies, was there any privatization until 2004? Was there any revitalization? And why was privatization stuck then?
Very little. There was some policies like commercialization starting. I mean, this policy of commercialization means some more viable or more interesting socially owned companies or enterprises they were given to private management through this commercialization process, which means that they will take over the companies and start to manage them as a private ones. And then after this process, they start, UNMIC administration, after they clarified with the legislation, because it was very difficult. It was everything to be clarified with the United Nations in New York. And when it's about building up policies, it took so long to clarify something. This is why the privatization started few years after the UNMIC presence in Kosovo, and they established a so-called specialized agency, Kosovo Trust Agency, which was in charge to collect and identify all the socially owned enterprises and to make an inventory of their assets and to start a privatization process, which started many years ago and still is going on. Is not finalized, so it's very long period of privatization, which is not good, because assets are not in the same value if they are taken under custody or for many years, because they lose the value. But the most important is that they were in our provisional constitution. They they start to build up a market economy. So in this provisional constitution, it was the basics of economy were set, and they said that we have to build up a market economy, which means that all the socially owned enterprises should be privatized. And what was interesting was that because of lack of funds in Kosovo, and because of not easy way to attract foreign investments for this privatization process, the many assets, many companies were sold for, and even the land, arable land, and this were sold for not good prices. But the most important, this is from my point of view, is that privatization is, the most important target of privatization is to change the ownership, not to sell with high prices, or not to employ so many people. And this is not very much understood in Kosovo. They don't see privatization as a change of ownership, as I see. They see, even the professors in the university, and they want through privatization to develop the country, to bring the foreign investments, and which is not easy. Especially for the countries like Kosovo, which is landlocked with not good infrastructure. I'm talking even 10 years ago, not even now. It was not easy to attract foreign investments to come to privatize such a. But the most important was change of ownership, which happened in some 50% of the assets which were under this process, and is still going on. For the moment, it's stopped. The privatization is stopped because the new government urged that they will change the policy.
In the phase between 2000 and 2004, the fundamental decision was taken that Kosovo should be a market economy and a democracy.
Yes.
This is very important. The second very important step was also to have a new currency. And it's quite interesting that basically it was the German mark first and later the euro. Can you describe how the German mark became the currency of Kosovo and how later the euro was then adopted?
Yes, it was interesting. I mean, because the German mark was present in Kosovo because of inflation. As I told, we had the gallopant inflation in ex-Yugoslavia and also in Kosovo, and the goods which were real value goods, they were all sold in German marks. People were doing business in, I mean, the trade using the currency which was a German mark. Only some goods were sold in Yugoslav dinar, and this is how the German mark was introduced in the economy, and also because of diaspora. I mean, which was in Germany, but also of influence of German economy in ex Yugoslavia. This was not only case of Kosovo; it was case also in Serbia and other republics like Bosnia and Croatia and Slovenia. The German mark was the real money. The Yugoslav dinar was not so valuable, and it was very dangerous to have in terms of, in economic terms, to have in your pockets because tomorrow morning maybe you cannot buy nothing with Yugoslav dinar. So this is why people were sticking with German. And when UNMIK administration after the war came here, they found out that people are trading and using German mark in Kosovo, and this was the reality. And because of this reality, the UNMIK administration and the head of administration, which was with a very powerful person, because they were under, I mean, with powers from delegated from the United Nations and this resolution, they decided that this is reality, okay, because people have German marks in their pockets, they use this currency to trade goods, and they declared German mark as a currency because of the reality in place. This and Yugoslav dinar was not present at all in Kosovo, or only in few villages or where the population in this village was a Serbian minority. I mean, but very in terms of transactions and the volume, it was very few. And then it came in 2002 because European Union decided to go not only all European Union, but so-called Eurozone countries. They decided to change their national currencies with euro and to have a single currency. Then again, administration was in the position similar to before. What to do? They had to introduce euro because people were having German marks, and German mark has to disappear to be replaced by euro. Then they decided to do the same. And euro was introduced in Kosovo at the same time, the same day as it was introduced in Eurozone, in the countries which adopted. And I remember this very well because I was part of the campaign. I was doing the campaign for informing Kosovars about new currency and the process of replacement of German mark with new euro. And I was very happy to do that. And because at that time I was running the so-called Euro Info Center, which was an office in the Kosovo Chamber of Commerce, contracted with the European Commission. It was an office for informing people about European Union economy and businesses, and vice versa, informing European Union business about Kosovo. And this is how I was engaged in the project with our central bank. It was not, in that time was Central Fiscal Authority, it was not central bank, in introducing euro. It was very smoothly conducted a process, and it happened like this. The so-called Central Fiscal Authority collected all the German marks, exported to Germany, and Germany gave, so it was also political support. It was not just export, import, but this was a process. Exported with through our airport in an airplane, and exported German mark to Germany, and imported euro. And people who were, having money in their bank accounts, they were replaced one in the report one two German marks, I think 1 euro, I think, as I remember. The same, I think it was in Germany. But this was because of the reality. Everything happened because of the reality which was present in Kosovo, not because that someone wanted to introduce as a policy or as an economical, but it was fortunate that developments went in that way, because introducing euro in Kosovo was very good policy, because we understood better the prices. Like, say, the same euro is in Germany or in Austria, so you can compare easy prices. You understand the value better, and the inflation was similar with inflation in Germany or in Austria or in other countries. And we didn't need to have our currency. So it means expensive to have your currency, means a lot of machinery, printing, maintenance, the systems to work. It is very expensive. So it was fortunate that we introduced in that way euro in Kosovo.
And next year it's 20 years that the euro is in Kosovo. Would you see that as an overall good policy for Kosovo to have the euro for economic stability?
Yes, it was very good. It was very good, and mostly because of familiarization with the prices, with the value of the money, of the currency, and also because of inflation. It's different if you have someone like a European Central Bank to take care about the money itself. And the stability of this money, than to have a small country like Kosovo and a government not very very familiar with monetary policies and other currency related policies to have in place. I think it was very, very useful for Kosovo economy to have a euro in place.
And did you continue in that years also with the old Yugoslav financial system, or was the new financial system built up with new banks? And how was the euro then as a backbone for these new banks developing?
Banking system and overall financial system in Kosovo was built from the scratch, from nothing, because ex-Yugoslav financial system was replaced with a new one. It didn't exist. When we came, and how it was developed, it was we started with of course, with the legislation first, the regulation from the Central Fiscal Authority, regulation on bank and non-bank institutions, and we started with a small bank. It was so-called micro enterprise bank. Now it's ProCredit Bank. This opened in all major cities or major centers in Kosovo. Then through this regulation, UNMIC start to give licenses to other banks, and we managed in the, let's say, now 20 years to have a sound financial system in place. Also, banking sector very healthy. The banks are mostly with foreign capital. There is also banks with local capital, but all of them are Kosovo banks, and they are working well. They are working also providing very good services to citizens and to companies, and they are doing with profit, because I'm following also the banking sector is working with good profit, and it is a backbone of our economy, because the companies can easily now borrow money. Even we have in place a so-called fund for guarantees. I mean, guarantee schemes. It means some of the loans are covered by or risk from this loans is covered by this fund. So banks can easy or more easy lend money to companies, and then companies do investments and prosper. I mean, this is the banking sector, and overall, I mean, financial sector is a great success in Kosovo.
In Europe, we had now in 2008 a great financial crisis, and also we had the Greek debt crisis in 2011 and 12, and also the Ukrainian currency crisis of 2014 and 15, which was also a major shock in Eastern Europe. My question now is the Kosovo banking system in the last 20 years, since the euro was introduced and the banking system reformed, was there any bank crisis in Kosovo in the last 20 years?
No, because not the 2008 crisis in the world was not very much influencing Kosovo financial system, because we were not exposed. I mean, we were not exposed. Only some of exposures were our pension fund and some investments from the privatization fund, but it was not so big amounts. So we were not exposed, and because of that, we were not subject to any major. Okay, I'm not saying that it was nothing that we faced, but it was very little. So it was not any crisis in place.
So with good policy, the currency was stable with the euro,
yes,
and the banking sector is stable since 2002. Let me ask you about the pension system, because it's something very unique which Kosovo has. It has a funded pension system, and that's basically everybody contributing. Can you describe why it developed, who had the idea, and what came out of it, and what is this trust system working today? And assess it, please.
Yes, again, there was a unique administration in place, and they had the situation that people were not enjoying their pensions, because the pension fund was taken over by Serbia. And we had an empty pension fund in Kosovo. There was no pension fund in function. So the UNMIC administration had to face this situation. And what they decided then, of course, when I say UNMIC administration, it was always in consultation with the local people, because UNMIC administration had the so-called interim bodies, which were placed. Some people were also Kosovars there as advisors, as not decision makers, but people who can influence for good decisions. And then when they face this situation that people are coming to the age of 65 and they are not able to work anymore, but they don't have any funds to live after this age, then they introduced a regulation which says that everyone who reach this age, they have to be to have kind of basic pension, which is very little in amount. I mean, it was, I think, 75 euros a month to everyone who reached this age, which was good policy. I mean, 75 is better than zero. I mean, because with 75 euros, you can pay electricity, let's say 20 euros, you can pay some, I mean, very basic things. It's much better than, which was very good policy. And because of lack of this fund, because they were funded by the Kosovo budget, I mean, this basic income for the elder than 65, then they start to establish a new pension fund based on savings. It was a policy came from United Nations, mostly World Bank, because World Bank has many experiences from all over the world, in the countries all over the world, and UNMIC hired or invited some people to advise them what to do in this situation. And in 2000 and I forgot when we start. I think we started in 2002.
Must have been 2 or so.
2, yes. They established a Kosovo pension fund, but based on savings. So everyone who is employed, again with the regulation, I mean with the law, everyone who is employed, he has to contribute with 5% of his incomes to the fund, and the employer 5% for the employee. So some 10% of the gross salary goes to this fund as a savings, as a personal savings for someone who is employed. So it is only for the people who who receive regular salary on monthly basis, not the ones who receive in the black market. Because still, or it was more in previous years, that some people just work in so-called gray economy or black market, and they are paid by the employers in cash without any contribution to the fund. And this fund went very well. I mean, we have now a fund, and from I mean, maybe let's say 15 years in the function. The fund did well. I was also in a year and a half, I was a member of the supervisory board of this fund, so I know very well how this is a fund established and how it performed. It performed well because firstly, the board, supervisory board, was mainly consisted of international experts and few local experts, and it was not subject of any mismanagement or which was not the case with this other like funds like of companies or socially owned companies. So this was very successful. Even now, during this crisis of, not now, but the crisis of 2008, suffered little because this was exposed in the market, in the US market and European market, was not so much damaged. I mean, it was recuperated. These damages was recuperated in next years. Now this fund is more than I think $1.5 billion, I don't know, euros. And it was used, it's interesting that it was used during this pandemic crisis. The government and the parliament, they introduced a new law that people who has this savings, the savings in this fund, they can withdraw 10% of their savings for a kind of reaction for economic crisis created by pandemic situation. So it was used, but only for them who which saved. So, and their savings were invested by the fund, and they had some funds in their savings in this fund.
So by these good decisions, actually, Kosovo is one of the few countries which has a fully funded pension system with individual retirement accounts.
Yes,
Quite impressive.
yes, yes. It was the only solution in that moment, and it was good decision and made, as I described, made by the experts of World Bank and people who were very much familiar with experiences of other countries, and we benefit from the Jonvik administration and from the knowledge of these people.
So this was the phase from 2000 to 2004, and then came the crisis of 2004. That was a very difficult moment again. And then came the second phase of UNMIK, which was leading from 2004 to 2008 to the Declaration of Independence. And here there was a major reforms of the privatization process, and there was the real start of the privatization of Kosovo Trust Agency. And can you describe the success of and the problems and the challenges of the privatization process in this phase 2004 to 2008?
This agency was a specialized agency of UNMIK administration, so-called Kosovo Trust Agency. So it means its agency was in charge to manage and to collect all the information and to do the inventory of all the socially owned enterprises and their assets, and to start the privatization. It means to develop regulations about who can participate, how, and which companies are going in which so-called waves of privatization, and with which kind of policies, because they had for certain companies different policies for certain different, some more viable companies, they were for the process of privatization, and some they were more designed for liquidation, because they have no assets that can develop a business in the future. And as I told, I said before, the major, the major benefit is that this process changed the ownership. It's very big difference having one company with facilities, with other assets like machines and in private, than the same one as a socially owned, because the private business people, they are more eager to develop. They can make decisions overnight. They make decisions whatever they can make decisions, like shrinking their let's say business activities in half of the facilities and renting the half to someone else, or bringing investors from abroad, or bringing investors from our diaspora. They are. This is why I'm making this description, that the major result is change of ownership, and usually when you ask people here, they are not very much understanding this, that in so-called in market economy, the ownership is very important. Especially the private ownership is very important because of the competition. You cannot compete if you have a company so-called socially owned and is managed by the workers' council, and they cannot make a decision based on the risk. They always try to make decisions which are low risk. They keep their working places, keep the status quo, which is not in favor or not real market economy. Market economy needs someone who takes risks, who invests in qualitative technology, new technologies, and bring investments from abroad, because we don't have much funds here ourselves. And this is the major result. I mean, the decision and the change of this is the main. Then others or that some people lost their jobs because of this process, but some people gain new jobs. So I mean, it's not the process which is easy or without any harm. I mean, it's a reform. I mean, when you have reforms, you cannot keep everyone happy. I mean, everybody happy, and this is how it went also here. Major or the biggest companies are privatized. Some of them, they managed to be successful as privatized ones. Some of them not, because as I told you before, of all technologies, a lot of investments needed, a lot of knowledge, know-how needed, which was not in place. So this is, from my point of view, a very good process, very good reform, and will give results in I mean in the future. But unfortunately, it was not finalized. Even after the declaration of independence in 2008, with a new legislation, our government just renamed the agency. It was instead of Kosovo Trust Agency, Kosovo Privatization Agency, but with the same goals, with very similar policies, but not with very good management. I mean, because of political influence in the management and in the board of the privatization agency, and they didn't manage to finalize this process. Some 50% of the assets are sold, and some 50% I think are still to be sold, but now is blocked because of the new government. They blocked, and there's no development, which is very wrong decision from my point of view.
So still some work to do for the privatization process, but interesting that Kosovo has chosen the German model, similar like Germany. For Eastern Germany has a Treuhand, it's called. You had this trust and privatization agency. Let me ask you also what happened with the money from the sales of the companies. What exactly was done with this privatization proceeds?
Firstly, there's not big money, because as I told you, because the prices of the sales was not so high. I think it's some 600 million euros, which are in total, which are hold in custody of our central bank, and they invest those money, they invest abroad in international markets, because the idea is that this money should be kept in case of any claim from different creditors for ex companies. I mean, the companies which were privatized, and this money is this is why it's kept in the central bank and invested abroad, just to keep the value and to have the funds to recuperate or to pay the claims if there is a decision by the special chamber, because there is special chamber in our judiciary system which take care about these cases. I mean, if there is a case and the decision is made that someone has to be paid because is creditor, then there is a money to be paid.
It's also quite substantial amount, 600 million euros. So also that is a second success story next to the pension fund, to the private.
Yes, we can consider it very successful.
Considerable. 2008 was then the declaration of independence, and that was a moment of joy, obviously, and also of progress. And then the full sovereignty was until 2011 overtaken by the Kosovo government. And this led also to major economic policy changes. Let me first ask about the taxation system, because then also Kosovo changed to a very competitive taxation system of 10%. Can you describe the process and what's that effective and positive for the Kosovo competitiveness?
As for after the, I mean the war and this United States, United Nation administration, it was logically that Kosovo will become independent, but it was just a matter of timing, and this it was probably this so-called events of 2004, which they delayed a little bit the independence, but those events were not. We now understand from this, I mean, perspective from now. I mean, we understand that there was a lot of influence from other countries and other non-friendly maybe governments or institutions who led those events to occur, and this is postponed the process of declaring the independence. Then it happened in 2008. It was the only resolution of the situation. I mean, because we were not anymore in favor as a citizens to be part of Yugoslavia or even less part of Serbia, because of the history, because of the also because of many other realities, especially because the population in Kosovo is the density is very high. Let's say in Serbia, the density of population is low. Compare with Kosovo is I think is 10 times difference, and there was not kind of pressure. I mean, population pressure or something. It was just political pressure, and this was only the only solution that we became independent. Of course, our politicians grow up. I mean, they became more familiar with the country, with the policies, with international relations, and they used this momentum of support from EU, from United States, and from our neighboring countries, except from Serbia. All others are, or mostly, were supporting, and they decided to declare their independence, which was successfully done in 2008. I was also part of this environment, and even little bit contributing to these moments in terms of keeping people informed, keeping business community, because in that time I was Secretary General of Kosovo Chamber of Commerce. I was mostly dealing with business community, mostly with the people in Kosovo and business community in the region. I had to explain what we are doing, what we are making this kind of decision, and when it's going to happen, inviting guests, and this being present in this historic moment. So it was successful, another successful moment for the country and for the people of Kosovo, which is, from my point of view, which is a result of the freedom. I mean, if you are free, then you can develop such ideas. I mean, you can, if you are not free, and people of not only Kosovo, I mean, when I say most of the people in the region, they were free. I mean, people in Albania, in Macedonia, and I mean, they're free from very tough regimes. I mean, they were producing such tensions and kind of will to conquer and to win non-winnable situations. I mean, to win over others. And this, democratization of all the region produced this kind of events. I mean, people were free, and if you are free, then you can develop even a country, which is our case, which it's obvious that it contributes to the stability in the region. I mean, people are back. They start to develop their family economies, their economy in total. The relations with the neighbors start to develop in trade and in other relations, and also political, like recognizing. So all our neighbors, I mean, except Serbia and Bosnia, recognized Kosovo. I mean, when I say neighbors, I'm saying the neighbors which are in bordering with Kosovo, which is very important. And also the other developments in place, like NATO membership of a few countries in the region, which also stabilized a lot the situation. So we were doing what has to be done, and it was done successfully, of course, with the support of our friends, support of the democratic governments and the institutions of European Union and Europe in general, and United States.
So let me ask about the taxation policy, because you, as a new government, you decided to be very competitive. You wanted to grow. Freedom was important, obviously, security, but then you decided for a growth model with low taxation to really allow the companies and the SMEs to prosper. How did that happen?
Yeah, this happened also with, of course, with the help of international community and with the help of international experts and local experts. I was also in charge in some 2002, 2004, 2006. I was member of the board of tax review. So-called tax review board. It was an appeal body for the taxation disputes. I mean, if a business is in dispute about taxes, it goes to administration, tax administration. If there is still dispute, then go to this appeal body. I was member, kind of judge for the taxes for 4 years. And this is why I follow this tax system, and I do understand how it was developed. I mean, mostly was with the support of IMF, International Monetary Fund, with the World Bank, and of course EU pillar in unique administration. So it was a special unit in the unique administration, which was in charge for economy, and this was EU-led body, or EU-led pillar of unique administration. They, of course, they decided that we need to be competitive also in terms of taxes which are imposed in Kosovo, and they decided that we have a very simple system. I mean, this is also very important to understand. Simple system means you have one tariff for, let's say, for corporate tax, one tariff for VAT, which then was changed. I mean, which was wrong from my point of view, because then when our government was in charge, they want to be more kind of attractive, and they start to do, let's say, in VAT, now we have two tariffs. We have three, 0, 8, and 18. I mean, it was more simple to have one tariff. I mean, but you know, when you have in government professors of economy is very dangerous. I mean, they want to be creative. They want to be creative no matter of. But if there is engineers like me, and they say, no, I want simple. I don't want this 802. I want, let's say, kind of median, like 12 or 10, or because of the implementation. This is also important. I mean, people who implement this, they are simple people. They are business administrators. They need simple system. Otherwise, they need to hire accountants. They need to hire people who know which goods goes in which tariff, and which is from my point of view is wrong. And the success was good because we managed to have a tax administration and custom administration. And what is unique, let's say, not only in all over the world, but is that we imply customs and VAT at the borders. Still, it was a burden for the companies, and because they have to credit the VAT before. I mean, so they have to credit to the government the VAT, which they will collect after they when they sell the products. But it was effective. I mean, it's not easy that you smuggle the goods and you, I mean, but if you let the businesses to first bring the goods inside, then you charge them with, or you try to collect taxes inside, is different. There is much more opportunities for tax evasion. And this was also simple system that you pay customs and VAT when you enter in the country. And still our government is keeping this policy because they are afraid if they let them the goods flowing in, then trying to collect VAT would be less. I'm sure that it will be less. So still is this system in place. It's simple, and what is important, the tax administration is very much developed, because government they are interested to collect money, and they, whatever they do, they digitalize, they provide services, very good service when you have to pay taxes. I mean, all these electronic solutions, I mean, digital solutions for filling the forms, all are in place. Also, our customs are well developed in terms of using technology, digital technologies, and these things, and the system is functioning well. So it means government is collecting taxes. Majority of the taxes are those two taxes, customs and the VAT, and they are collecting in the Kosovo Consolidated Fund, and from this fund they develop a budget every year for the Kosovo government.
So Kosovo has a 10% corporation tax and also maximum 10% income tax, but also Kosovo has quite a good budget revenue. Can you describe the development of the overall budget revenue? How much money the state has now at its disposal yearly from 2008, for example, independence, then to now, how much money has the Kosovo government available?
Because of this simple system and the administrations which are in place, like tax administration and custom administration, they are managing very well to collect the taxes, and they all the taxes, I mean, all different taxes goes to so-called Kosovo Consolidated Budget, and from this budget they Kosovo Consolidated Fund, and from this fund they fund the budget. I mean, every year budget for the country. It was a progress. I mean, I don't know the numbers by heart, but there is always a progress. There were better and better collection of taxes, which is also related with economic development, because we had like 3 to 5% economic growth in these previous years. So we had much more imports and exports. And because of this bigger, let's say, transactions, also the taxes collected were bigger and bigger every year. I mean, only this previous year, 2020, because of pandemic situation, we had like minus 4.5% in terms of economic growth. So we were not growing, but we were shrinking, like in many other other countries. But I think it's tax administration, custom administration, and overall budget. This fund management and budget management was a success story, which is
As far
I
as I
would like.
remember, please.
No.
As far as I remember, it was about 700 million euros, the budget, when UNMIK handed over to Kosovo government, and it's now more than 2 billion euros every year,
Yes,
which is
those
quite
are the
3 times the budget,
yeah.
despite you having very low taxation level, and that's something to congratulate. And it allowed also for the new Kosovo government in 2008, when it took power, 2010 as well, then it was the biggest infrastructure drive on the Balkans. Quite unbelievable. I've never seen such a major infrastructure drive in terms of highway building in a country. And can you describe what Kosovo has achieved in terms of infrastructure in the last 10 years?
Yes, was developments. I mean, positive developments in terms of road infrastructure, especially. We managed, which is also important. I mean, we managed by our funds to develop a highway towards Albania and highway towards Skopje, Macedonia, which is, I mean, interesting, because nobody, let's say, was expecting that the country with such a budget enter in this, let's say, let's say one highway was around 600 million euro. Another one was another like 700, I think, million euro. It was a big portion of the budget, but from my point of view, it was a good decision because we hadn't no highways at all. I mean, no highways in Kosovo, and the future developments are very much linked with, I mean, in terms of economic development, are linked with transport of goods, especially through with Albania and Macedonia, because the ports which are in that direction, like ports in Greece, Piraeus ports in Athens, and ports in Albania, in Durrës and in Valona, are the ones which most of the goods are coming in Kosovo, and others are coming through Serbia and the highway which is towards Serbia and Hungary and other Western countries. It was a good success, I think, and they were successfully finished, which is important, and contracted in with international companies which are capable of doing such a projects. Then new developments which are coming now are in railway infrastructure, which is under development. I mean, we are developing with the EBRD funds the railway from Serbia to Kosovo, which goes to Macedonia, Skopje. So, and it will be a railway with European standards. So it means the fast trains will go over that railway, which was not the case now. I mean, we have only slow trains and slow railway because it's old. And also another, infrastructure development in that period was airport, because the only port we have is airport. We don't have any seaport. And I think the concessions which were given for managing and investing in airport for 20 years was a successful one. Now we have one of the most frequent airports and in the region. I mean, the Pristina International Airport is a functional one, is well managed, and is there is some investment done there, which allowed that many airplanes at the same time can land and can take off, and also number of passengers is in terms of business is good.
So in just 13 years of independence, one very well working airport, one highway to Albania, which is finished, one highway to Macedonia, which is finished. And I think there's also a highway going to Chilan, your hometown, is now also connected to the highway,
Yes,
and it's under construction.
Yes, it's a highway which is under construction, but unfortunately this is not contracted with international companies. It is contracted with local companies and in few lots, and it's under development. I don't have exact timing in my mind where it's going to be finished, but it's a new development, and it goes towards Gilan, and with aim to be interconnected with a corridor which is Athens Belgrade, another highway which is in between Macedonia and Serbia, which is also important for Kosovo economy to be linked with this corridor.
Further highways to Serbia, maybe to the north, to Mitrovica, and also to Peja is very important, or do you want to stop the highway construction project?
No, it's going to be another highway towards Serbia in the north. There is development in that it goes from Pristina to Niš, because it's very much important for us and for others also, because it will link the corridor which goes Belgrade towards Istanbul, or towards Bulgaria and Romania, towards Bulgaria and Turkey. So this is mostly projects which are supported, not even financially, by the infrastructure initiatives, which are regional infrastructure initiatives. I mean, they want to develop a grid of the highways, which will contribute to the development of whole the region, not only Kosovo.
Now, after independence in 2008, Kosovo government took also control of all the big infrastructure companies, which are all state-owned. Obviously, the energy company, and also the railway company, and also the telecom company, and there are several of them. These are big state-owned companies. Also, I think you were involved in some of them. Can I ask you, what's the status of the management of these companies? And is there also some idea to privatize them? And why actually does Kosovo not have a stock exchange where some of the companies' minority stakes could be sold to the investing public of Kosovo, and maybe also international stakeholders, shareholders would be interested to buy into some of these state-owned companies in a minority shareholder via a stock exchange?
Yeah. There is some companies which were incorporated when was in charge Kosovo Trust Agency, so-called, and some of the companies were not privatized, but they were incorporated in new companies, so-called public companies. They are public. I mean, their name is public because the ownership is 100% by the Kosovo government. This is why they are called public, not that their shares are sold in the public market, but because and some people are even confused confused because of that. But they are public because of the law on public companies, and it means that those companies are joint stock companies, registered as joint stock companies, and all the stocks are owned by the Kosovo government, and therefore they are managed by the board, which are elected by the Kosovo government, which was not really successful, mostly because of mismanagement and influence of the political powers, because they wanted to use those companies for overemployment, for clientelism, for even for receiving some benefits, even in financial terms, not really in place with in relations with good practices or the law. I was in charge with one of these companies, which is Post and Telecom of Kosovo, in years 2002, 2012, 2014, which were, the company was successful in that time. I remember very well that in 2012 we paid 45 millions of euro to the Kosovo budget for as a dividend. Then in 2000, just I'm placing the example which I know because I was present, I was in charge even. And the second year of my management was 2013. We paid 40 million euros of dividends. So it means, and in total in that time was like around maybe 400 million euros, which was paid by this company to the Kosovo budget, to the Kosovo, to the owner as a dividend. But they were, the government were, in my case, I mean, maybe I better decide, was not satisfied because I was not cooperating. I was not cooperative. I mean, I was not cooperative with any policy which was not in line with the law. I mean, so, and instead of continuing with this kind of management and receiving the dividends, I was let's say fired by the board because they wanted someone else who who wants to obey with their non-official policies. I mean, I was supporting only what is official. I mean, and this is why. But unfortunately, I mean, it was a very bad decision, and then new management were changed oftenly. I mean, and now the company in 2021 is almost in the process of bankruptcy because the policies of the government were wrong. And what is very important, they don't understand what they did. I mean, because the people who were in charge are members of the parliament. I mean, they didn't manage to monitor what the government is doing with, let's say, with the post and telecom. Because the members of the parliament, some of the people are for the first time there, they don't know really what they have to do. They don't know that they have to fight with the government in terms of monitoring, in terms of making them to make right decisions. And they were not doing that. Members of the parliament, they were just trying to have some benefits for themselves, and they were not following or monitoring the government. Then the government was misusing those companies, not only Postal Telecom, but also some other publicly owned companies, or we call them public companies, because it was judgment or not really understanding the role of the members of the parliament. And then because they think that they are not the ones who have to fight with the government in terms of informing them, in terms of understanding what's going on, and the government as governments, they use them for their policies. I mean, if some government wants to go for elections, then they use those public companies for employing people or
yes, I
what's
hear
going
you.
on now?
No, it's good. I understand you very well.
No, but just to sign out, okay, Zoom. You have been signed out because of currently signed in another device. I don't know what.
No, it's working fine. It's recording, yeah?
Okay, it's
I think
recording.
it was somehow for 2 hours in the limit of the discussion. And
Okay.
but if you have time, we can continue for half an
Yeah,
hour
we
more,
can continue.
because
It's
some
up to you.
very
It's up
important.
to you.
I would like to ask you, Ejup, because in Austria we also have the problem with state-owned companies. Even today, it's very problematic.
Okay.
But we also have this, jobs for the boys and corruption and problems, with political interference. But the advantage we have a stock exchange in Austria, and we put at least a minority of the shareholding capital, we put on the stock exchange. So the politics and the management have also always to look for the capital market and to keep the rules, because some American funds is also invested in our energy company, and that's some advantage. And to my best knowledge, I think Kosovo is the only country in Europe which doesn't have a stock exchange. And so my question is for you, wouldn't it not be possible to create a stock exchange like in Podgorica is one, in Skopje is one, there is one in Albania now, and to have some minimal floating, like 10%, 15, 20% of the state-owned companies, like for example, the energy company, in order to start some better management of this?
I don't know the reason why we don't have, but personally, my point of view is that the stock exchanges are businesses, are companies. And in the country like Kosovo, this company or stock exchange will be very expensive and it will not perform well. I mean, this is maybe it's better to have kind of one regional stock exchange. And all this, I mean, none of them you mentioned in Podgorica and in Albania, they're all not performing well. I mean, as companies, because they are not making any profit. They are, I'm sure of that. I mean, I'm sure that they are under losses and they are subsidized or something. Somehow they are living, but because we don't have much market for I mean for stock exchange, and could be maybe to have another solution, but I don't see because let's compare now stock exchange for electricity. I mean, not power exchange, not stock exchange, power exchange for electricity. I mean, we are developing together with Albania one power exchange for both countries, because it's expensive to have one at home. I mean, this is why it's not developed. Maybe it's not feasible. I'm sure that it's not feasible, but could be other. I mean, the better solution is to privatize them, all of them, to privatize. I mean, because as publicly owned companies and managed or supervised by government is not working. I mean, and they are not competitive. I mean, at all. If I compare, let's say, what happened in the telecom market when it's liberalized, now the ISP providers, private ISP providers, are very aggressive. I mean, the market is very well developed. I mean, you can have 3-4 offers at your, even in the village, which I'm here. I mean, they came here as a private company. As a public company, they will never come here, because I mean, you see, this is the last house in the border with Macedonia and Serbia, and I have cable connection with cable.
Very
It's
good.
private company. It's a private. So publicly owned companies in Kosovo should be privatized. I mean, all of them, even if it's and supervision because of the prices and the regulated market, and it should be very strong from the government bodies. I mean, non-government, even the independent bodies like energy regulation or telecom regulation bodies. I mean, but the companies should be privatized because they are not competitive. They cannot compete with private companies are very aggressive. They do their activities legally, illegally. They are very aggressive. So this is my
So you
point of
about
view.
the privatization of the big
Full,
Kosovo state-owned companies. Let me
yes.
ask you about the biggest one, because the biggest sector in every economy, but also especially in Kosovo, is about the energy sector. And you have this state-owned company called KEK. It's operating two major thermopower, and you have these gigantic coal reserves of Kosovo, which is such a big volume, but unfortunately not really very well lifted and not really very much mobilized. There was always a question about the American project Kosovo Sea. And how is the status quo now of this big project? Because since 20 years, everybody discusses about Kosovo Sea, about the next new power plant, and when will it come? Where's the status quo?
Energy sector, I mean, was really not well developed since, I mean, beginning, since 20 years now, because we had old power plants, two of them, and not well maintained. But thanks to the mostly European Union, they were revitalized and managed to supply with the power, with electricity, the Kosovo. But in the very beginning, like first 10 years, we had a very bad situation with electricity. We had non-stable supply, and also not in international trade with electricity not well established. I mean, we were in so-called regulatory zone with Serbia, Macedonia, and Montenegro, and we were facing always obstructions from the Serbia in trying to develop international trade in electricity. So to import, to have a stable supply with electricity. Then as a policy was, because of that, the policy was to have a new power plant, so-called the Kosovo Sea, which was never developed. I mean, we had few initiatives, even a project, even an international tender for having a contract with an investor who will build a Kosovo Sea, which appeared to be one American company named Contour Global. But also this project failed. Now we are in the dispute in international arbitration with this company as a country, and the project is stopped. I mean, we don't have any initiative. What is going on in this sector is that we are having a few small projects with renewable energy, like wind. We have 2 wind parks now. One is functional, and second is under development. And we have also some these photovoltaic parks, which are a small one, and some hydro facilities, also hydro energy turbines, which are also small capacities. What happened in this market is that now we are not anymore with regulative in a regulation zone with Serbia. We managed to split, and we are in regulative zone with Albania. So 2 countries, we are having a new one market. And with the help of of Germany, we managed to have a so-called highway, energy highway between Kosovo and Albania. It means high voltage transmission line between Kosovo, which is functional now because now we are in the same zone. So we are developing a market, unique or united market with Albania, and we will have a power exchange in Albania, and we will use the sources of power in Albania, and they will use others. So this is very new development, but we don't see any. I don't see any further development in using the coal reserves and building a new power plant, because also in the world, these kind of projects are not supported anymore. I mean, World Bank is not supporting the coal power plants, and the country as we are not very much in line with like Serbia using Chinese funds or Bosnia Herzegovina using their own funds to develop power plants with coal. So there is some developments in the region, but not in Kosovo, despite that we have 14 billion tons of coal in our yard, let's say close to Pristina. This is some of or one of the failures, I mean, of the country, because of different influences. Differently, also in this sector, our energy sector is very much politicized, and there is a strong international influences. As I described you, we were in the zone with Serbia. Now we are not anymore with Serbia. We are with Albania, and all those development takes years. I mean, takes 10 years to reach such a independence, and to try to be self-sustainable, and to have enough power for the economy. I mean, it's very, very tough market, and it's it needs a lot of effort. Especially, it needs a lot of knowledge and stable governments. I mean, if we change, like we did, change the governments very often, and different people don't understand the situation, and they take 1 year to understand what's going on, what is the project, who is influencing who. It was not easy. This is why we failed, but it's a failure. But we hope to have investors like we have these two ones in wind energy, because with water we are finished. We don't have any much place to have water turbines, but only wind and solar. And let's see now the new government, maybe they will come with new policy, new orientations towards energy.
There are two water projects in Kosovo. One is Gazi Water Project, which is completely politically complicated with Serbia bordering, and one of Austria in the west of Kosovo, which also seems to run into some complications. If you don't want to use the coal, and why not use the water? What are the complications with the water projects?
Small, they are very small projects. I mean, the small capacities, they are not influencing much the total energy consumption. They are very small, okay, for investors, they are not small, but for, I mean, energy balance of Kosovo, they are small projects. And yes, I know that there is some disputes, but mostly is because, I mean, investors they used not a proper let's say ways to have licenses. I mean, they used a kind of shortcut to have licenses, and then there is also organizations like civil society organizations which they want to protect their environment, and then they raise the disputes, and disputes then make the life difficult for investments. I mean, for investors. But probably it's probably my point of view, or how I understand it's shortcut of receiving licenses.
Let me ask you about Trepcha, because that's such a big and also a fantasy inspiring topic. And everybody talks, there is such a volume of wealth down there underground next to coal. There should be also significant mineral resources. What do you assess? Is it really so important? Is there such a significant reserves? And do you see this that as a driver of economic development for the future of Kosovo?
I mean, the Trepcha mines and is a well-known company. I mean, but as I described, is a publicly owned company. It's and with a special law, even not even with a law on public companies, but even for Trepcha is developed a new law which tries to clarify the approach towards the development of Trepcha mines, which, despite of this law, not much things went ahead. I mean, only the law and some frequent, very few management changes. I mean, the board of and based on the changes in the every government is bringing the new supervisory board. New supervisory board is bringing the new CEO, new management, and without a clear policy, without any development plan. There is no in place any development plan, and if you don't have a plan, so it means you fail. I mean, because without plan, its failure is very close, and no funds also. I mean, if you have a plan, it means or privatization or any major orientation, and then you bring investors and they develop. I mean, there is no plan. There is no any future, I mean, near future development in Trepcha. And I'm maybe now with the new government, we have a very big hope with Mr. Kurti and the new government, and let's see. But towards these publicly owned companies and the privatization is very wrong. I mean, he's a left-oriented person, and he has or very bad advisors or no enough knowledge about private initiative, the competition, the market economy, and I mean, this should be changed. But I'm sure that he will be influenced. I mean, through information, through advice from international institutions, that because he has to change this approach. I mean, I'm not really in near future seeing any positive development in Trepcha.
But let me ask you, is there a lot of material underground? Is this value?
Yes, so there is estimations which are based on the exploration, and but the technology which is in place and the people which are working there, because there are some people which are working there, but with old technology, and they even cannot produce enough just to cover their expenses. I mean, in terms of salaries and maintenance of the so it's and the history also is a very big burden with Trepcha is history. I mean, history with miners, and they are very powerful, and the politicians are treating them as gods. I don't know. They are just workers, and even they are with the new law, they are in ownership 20% of the shares of the company. I mean, it's a very wrong approach. I mean, full of history and not really competitive. I mean, we have to get rid of history. We have to be competitive. No other way.
So, and also for the audience, what do you think? It's a lot of, what's the material down there? What is there a lot of mining? Is there something interesting theoretically, despite the political complications? Sure. Under Kosovo.
Yes, the explorations and the estimations are that I don't know by heart the tons of, but there is a zinc, then lead. Lead and zinc are the major metals. Then some others like gold, like cobalt, and I mean today, I mean, even in mines, you have to be competitive because there is a lot of mines in the world. I mean, they use new technologies, very heavy machinery. I mean, you have to be competitive. It's not like you have to produce. I mean, sometimes it's better not to produce because you produce and you make losses. I mean, there is a competition, and if our government and people don't understand this, that we have to be competitive, and only the ones which are competitive survive. I mean, no, I mean, they have to get rid of history, rid of making benefits because of their political needs, and I mean, it doesn't work. I mean, and there is huge competition in mines, in mining, huge competition, big.
So the natural resources of coal and mining are basically blocked because of history and lack of competitiveness and the legal issues. So let's come
and
about
and the governments which were changed often and not competent. I mean, they think that they are competent, but they seems and also influenced by different I mean influencer which has other goals. I mean, as I told you, energy market, minerals market are not only markets with a very high or intensive investment, but they are also valuable markets, and there is a lot of influencers there. So people who are in the government, they have to understand all of these things if they want to make decisions.
So let's come to the sector of small and medium enterprises. Kosovo is also in the Central European Free Trade Agreement and is also since 2016 is in an association agreement with the European Union. So you have good market access and a good regulatory framework because everything was built up, the good currency. How do you see the sector of SMEs and small medium enterprises? And I would like to invite you to a little journey through all Kosovo for Mitrovica to compare what you saw in '99 when after the war, when you went around, and how do you see now Kosovo and the companies? Are there many manufacturing companies? And can you name some successful manufacturing companies and SMEs of Kosovo today?
SMEs are the backbone, really. The ones which are functioning are private SMEs, privately owned SMEs. I mean, and they are in a good number, because as I told you, since 1990s, I mean, the privatizations started in Kosovo. I mean, even during Yugoslavia, now is 90, so it's 30 years from now. I mean, there is companies which are having a history of 30 years, and all of them are private, and all of them are SMEs, and they are, I think, well developed in different sectors, from agriculture, then light industry, then also companies which are doing only trade. There is companies which are in so-called digital economy sector, providing services abroad, which are so-called ICT sector companies. which is the sector most developed and most successful sector, because of infrastructure development and the knowledge the young people have in ICT. Mostly, let's say, maybe I describe a little bit this sector. In ICT, there is companies which are in so-called call center business. Most of them are placed in Pristina or in the neighborhood. Then software development companies and other services. This is also a very good chance, I mean, for Kosovo economy, because we have a very good internet penetration. Then also mobile telecommunications are in place, and a competitive market. We have two operators there, but in internet service providing, there is many competitors, and this is why we have a very cheap internet and very spread. And the companies in ICT sector, they rely on this infrastructure. I mean, they use to provide services through this infrastructure to companies, to their clients in Germany, in Switzerland, or in the United States, or in Austria, or everywhere. This sector is doing well and is well developed. In general, if you go around, as you asked, around Kosovo, like in Mitrovica is less developed because of constant tensions in this part of Kosovo, this northern part of Kosovo. But there is private companies in different sectors, like in Mitrovica. You have textile companies like Eurotex, or you have in Peja. If you go towards Peja, we have let's say successfully privatized Bira PS, or you have also some private owned companies of Devoli Corporation in different with different products like milk or coffee, or we are not only importers, I mean, of all these goods, but we do produce, okay, coffee we import, but this post, let's say, like post or post-importing processing, let's say, of coffee is done, everything all in this company, or flour mill, or mostly the companies, SMEs, which are successful are mostly linked with goods which are so-called basic goods which are sold in the supermarkets, like milk, flour, or this packaging industry. They import in bulk, like sugar, or and they do packaging in for the internal market. Then there is wood industry, also doing well. But what is interesting or distinguishing is that somehow, if you check SMEs, most of them, they have links with diaspora, Austria, Germany, mostly France, Switzerland or Italy. Somehow, again, people which are abroad, they brought the know-how, they brought the knowledge, they brought the money, they brought the machinery, sometimes used machinery, sometimes new machinery, but mostly they have links with diaspora. And now we have in all.
Yes, please.
We have in all cities, I mean, similar situation. I mean, very good SMEs, and they are the backbone. They are the biggest employers. They are the real economy. And what is interesting, I mean, when I see the people from the government, I mean, they always talk about Kosovo budget. I mean, they think that everything is linked with this budget. I mean, which is not true. I mean, the budget of these companies, SME companies, is much bigger than the Kosovo budget. It's many times bigger than Kosovo budget, but they speak always about Kosovo budget. I mean, because they collect revenues, they spend this budget for their projects, and it's end of the world. I mean, I want to see, let's say, people in the government that they know where is the economy, that SMEs and their budget is much bigger than the Kosovo budget. But when you listen to them, they always speak about their budget. I mean, Kosovo budget, the budget they are in position to manage and to collect and to. So if I see the government speaking more about SME budget, their I mean their way of financing or letting them freely to access to more money or to services which are provided by the government, then I will see the progress. But in general, they are doing well. I mean, of course, I mean, not forgetting the pandemic situation. Now they are not in very good situation, but I'm talking 10 years. I mean, from now, they were doing quite well. Not easy, not easy for them, but they were doing quite well.
Kosovo is today a mid-income economy. GDP per capita from the World Bank is about $2,800 per capita. So it's quite a success, actually, when you see.
There is projections for 5,000 for 20 in the future. There is a new projection which I read. It was for 2021, like 5,000.
So when you look back 20 years ago, you went through all the cities burning, destroyed. And now when you go to the cities, can you describe how is Chilan looking today?
Different, much different. And also other, I mean, because mostly are, I mean, what is, I mean, important is also this construction sector is doing well, not always strict with regulations and in terms of urban planning and proper planning, but there is a lot of construction done, and there is also a lot of construction going on. I mean, and this is also a good driver for the rest of the sectors. I mean, because if you do a construction of the building, then a lot of other sectors are involved there to finalize this building. I mean, construction is doing well. I'm not satisfied, I mean, with planning and how they keep the rules strict, and that, but it's going on. It's going on, and it's contributing to the overall economic activity.
Your neighboring country, Macedonia, has one of the best cadastre systems in the world and has also a digital planning permit process where every single construction permit is given digitally, and is also the master in the so-called business-friendly certification process of municipalities. Unfortunately, Kosovo is not participating in these processes, and maybe that would be a good idea for the future.
Yes, yes. This is especially we have to use the, I mean, the new technologies. I mean, the real chance and the real perspective is in new technologies, because those technologies are now in place, like in or functioning or utilized by Macedonia or other countries, and we have to go with that. I mean, we have to go with new technologies. New technologies are mostly digital technologies, and especially with this for these services which are government towards citizens and towards businesses. I mean, we have to develop them, but I don't see, I mean, the frequent changes of the government, they were very bad for this development, and now we have very stable coalition in charge, and I hope they will do well. I mean, they will do some progress in the near future.
Kosovo was just recognized by Israel. That was a major breakthrough. And Israel is such a digital economy. Do you think that it's possible to work closer with Israel in the digital sector and build some bilateral chamber and develop the digital sector of Kosovo very well?
Yeah, yes, this is a very good chance, because Israel is economy is one of the most developed economy, especially in the ICT sector. They are advanced, and there were contacts even prior to recognition through Albania. In Albania, there is this so-called Albania and Israel chamber, and usually the people from Kosovo were invited in the events. So maybe it's a good idea, I mean, to develop also Kosovo-Israel relations in terms of business associations, or any kind of association which will contribute that we receive investments or know-how from Israel. There is some, even now we have our embassy there, and it will be some progress, I'm sure on that. There will be progress.
Ejup, congratulations to the new government. You have now new president. Yeah? It's just this week, basically, it happened. It's very fresh. So that was a very important step. And also a new government with a new prime minister. And so from your business experience, now 40 years, what for the next level of economic development of the Republic of Kosovo, what are the key projects which are now important in order to lift Kosovo from a $5,000 GDP per capita to a $10,000 GDP capita? And also with this, I think it's then possible to join the European Union when you have reached this 10,000 level. So what is necessary now to do to double the GDP for Kosovo?
I see the chance for the country of Kosovo, which is, as I describe it, landlocked and a small country in terms of territory and population, and the human capital, and national resource, this mineral and other resources. I mean, I don't see big chance in that direction, because there is huge competition for that. But I see in a so-called digital economy, I mean, and as I described, the ICT sector, which is mostly working in this so-called digital economy, is our chance, because we have a younger population, and people with some language abilities, especially for English language, which is kind of prerequisite for entering into relations with digital economy. This is a good chance. This is, and maybe the only chance. Maybe the only chance, because we have a good infrastructure in place. So the internet penetration is a kind of prerequisite for this development of this economy, and this economy is under development in all the world. I mean, when I speak digital economy, I speak for transformation of traditional way of doing business in the new way of doing business. And if you are in the middle somewhere, you can tap something in this shift between this traditional way of doing business and the new way of doing business. And we are in good, in good way doing this approach, but it has to be recognized as a priority. And from my point of view, the only solution for this kind of huge growth. If you want to grow rapidly and this economy is borderless economy, no much barriers. You can do services for any company in the world. Payment system is working from, you can be paid from, let's say, New Zealand to Kosovo if you provide services to them. And usually the services are globally recognized, and they are the same. If you take cloud services, is the same as from New Zealand, the same is in US, the same is for Austria. You can use or American companies or Chinese companies or to use their platform to provide services to some other companies in the world. Telecommunication is in very good level. Also, there is also big chance. So this is so-called transformation from traditional economy to digital economy, which utilizes the digital technologies, is a good chance. And I think this is the direction we have to go, and we are going. Anyhow, we are going with, but slowly. And for countries which are small and which can and are international. Also, this is important. Kosovo is very internationalized because of the presence of UNMIC and presence of NATO. This is also very much supportive for this kind of economy, because Kosovo people are very reluctant in contacting someone abroad. No matter if it's because they used to communicate with internationals in Kosovo, and then they keep the relations. They somehow is very internationalized country. Even when what we missed, maybe we missed when we developed our constitution, we missed to put English as a third official language. I was engaged. I was trying to convince some policymaker, but I was not successful. They were hating me when I was asking to.
That would have been a good idea from the beginning, yeah. That was a very good idea.
I was doing that when we was developing the constitution, but they were not supportive. Because I wanted 3 languages to have in place in Kosovo. Because of this international presence and because of people speaking English. So why not to have 3 languages official? And today English is prerequisite for this economic development. If you speak English, then you can learn, let's say, programming languages. You can learn different services in cloud services. You can learn different technologies, and then you can sell those skills or those services to other companies. But this is a chance, and this is how I'm very much in favor, and this is what I'm doing. I'm mostly doing this activity through NGO, like training. I always do some trainings, but in digital entrepreneurship, digital economy, let's say sectors, 3D printing, or any specific sector which is related with this economy.
So in the next 10 years, in 2030, where do you see the Kosovo economy? Will it be very successful decade ahead?
I think yes, will be successful. especially if we manage to have the government which is now in place for 2 mandates. If we have Mr. Kurti as a prime minister 4 years and next 4 years, for 8 years at least, will be very good for our economy, because we will have stable government, and the government which is his policy is anti-corruption, and which will end up with placing the right people in the management in different institutions, because in previous government they were mostly doing this so-called clientelism. I mean, someone who was supporting them, they were I mean, supporting them to have very top positions, which are very much related with the policy making and policy implementation. I mean, we have many independent bodies. Like now we have let's say body which is in charge for energy, so-called Kosovo Office for Energy, and the members of this board, they are not in place. I mean, because previous government wanted their people. I mean, I think now they will just elect and have people which are experts, and they do their job professionally, which was not the case before. I mean, I'm very happy with this government. Even I voted for this government because I saw the only way to go forward, and I will try to support as I can. I mean, through this kind of trainings or this digital economy propaganda, let's say. I will try to influence by informing the potential of this economy, by keep trying to do some trainings for young people, and also for the government people, if they are willing to listen this kind of trainings.
President Biden, the new American president, is a special friend of Kosovo. He contributed to the liberation, and also his son was active in the UN mission, and even one part of a highway close to your city, Chilan, as I understand, is named after his son, Bo Biden. And do you think that President Biden will focus on Kosovo and invite Kosovo to NATO now and provide additional political stability for your country?
Yes, of course, we are very happy and for this development in U.S. Political establishment. I mean, because he is the person who well know Kosovo. I mean, it's very important. It's not easy that one American president knows such a small country, but this happened that he was few times in Kosovo, and he was also engaged in developing policies towards Kosovo long time ago, not now, not as a vice president, but even as a senator, which is very important. So he's well informed, and we have also this case that, as you mentioned, that his son was serving in Kosovo, and even one road is proudly keeping his name as a remembering. I mean, remembering his contribution here, and other Americans, not only his contribution, but it's just merit. I mean, just a situation that our people wanted to remember such a people which contributed. I'm also very interested to follow. I mean, what will happen. I'm sure that the new government in US will focus a little bit in relations we have now under development with Serbia, and also in the Western Balkans. I mean, it's not like only Kosovo and Serbia, but Western Balkans is in the focus, because we do have their representative, Mr. Palmer, and we have who is in charge with overseeing the situation in this region. And also we have a commitment from European Union to lead this so-called dialogue with Serbia, and I'm sure that this will have an end, probably happy end. With now we are sure that our leadership, President Osmani and Prime Minister Kurti, will do well in these negotiations, because they will know very well how to represent the Kosovo needs and Kosovo reality. And they also have very good relations with EU politicians and American politicians. I mean, this is going to happen, and I'm seeing a happy end. I mean, a happy end means that any end which will contribute to the stability. So from my point of view is that we as a Kosovo recognize Serbia, Serbia recognize Kosovo, and we establish good relations, political and economical. And it's also, I think this solution is also very good also for Serbia, because it's not easy to be also in the position of Serbia, because instead of focusing on their development, economic development, they have to all the time they have to lose the energy with Kosovo, like funding parallel institutions, even sometimes developing some provocations. It's a lot of energy. I mean, it's not easy also for them. It's not easy.
Kosovo is now EU potential candidate country, and you as a former, you built up the Euro Information Center in the Chamber of Commerce in the beginning of the 2000s. Can you tell if mentality-wise the Kosovo people is pro-European people, and also regulatory, how far are you with EU regulation adoption at the moment?
This is I mean, this is very good potential in Kosovo, which is people are, as I said, very internationalized. It means they went through democratic change of the governments many times, which is also one of the key, let's say, goals if you want, you need to achieve if you want to enter European Union. So it means to have a democratic society, and we went through this democratic elections, governments many times, which was not good for economic point of view, but for the development of the democracy was very good. I mean, many people went through this through elections, through being elected, taking position, then losing the position. Now we are very, let's say, vibrant democracy. I mean, we can elect, we can do, and and people are very pro-European, of course, and especially the young people. And they now also, because of the communication we have in place. I mean, it's what happens in Europe or in the US, we know immediately, or what happens in Kosovo. I mean, it's also the technology which is in place. Is we have this, let's say, we speak about football the same as people in Austria. We speak about singers or the show business the same. I mean, we speak with similar economy. We speak about with euro. We know prices. We know. I mean, we are very very close. Even the mentality is changed very much. I mean, people are not now very much closed or living in this patriarchal families. The society very much changed, and it helps to, I mean, through this international presence, international help, trainings, because you know that many trainings happened in Kosovo. I mean, different abroad, here in Kosovo, and this gave a result, not immediately, but people are now, I mean, if you come, I think, to Pristina, you cannot really differentiate if you are in Skopje or somewhere in Tirana or in Belgrade or in Slovenia or it's or in Croatia. I mean, we are very very close with mentality. We are very close with not with economy yet. Very close with the legislation. This is important. We are very close with the legislation because, as I tell, we have established market economy. We have rules and regulation and laws very close with the acquis communautaire, so the legislation in place in EU, and this is under progress because we are always monitored by EU because we are the potential candidate, and we are also reporting progress, and the progress then is recognized or advised to be changed to be better, let's say, tuned or so. Sometimes is a problem. But I don't see very in very near future this let's say accession. Despite that, we have this agreement with the European Union. I mean, there is still to be done. I mean, especially in economic development. I mean, we have to progress much more in economic, not only economic development, but to progress in terms of welfare. I mean, people have to be, I mean, well situated with housing, with utilities, with education, with health system. I mean, this should be more progress in these fields.
Do you think that Kosovo will be full member of the European Union?
Yes, but not in very near future. I'm counting 10 years from now, maybe. But
Good.
not.
I believe in Kosovo, Republic of Kosovo, in 10 years.
Thank you.
I think it should be also, my question to you, do you think that all countries of the Balkans, after they have been together in Yugoslavia in the past and all the wars, can they live in peace together as members of NATO and the European Union and trade and be friendly again?
Yes, I'm sure on that. I'm sure on that, and it's also the developments are going in that direction. I mean, I see because this wave of is coming closer and closer, wave of accession. I mean, we had Slovenia, now we have Croatia. You see people like Croatia and Slovenia are doing well. I mean, as a neighbors, I don't see any but there is some change. I mean, there is some progress needed to be in Bosnia and in Serbia, in Kosovo, and then I'm sure on that. I mean, NATO and EU will work. I mean, I'm sure on that.
Perfect. Ejup, now it was a 3-hour interview about 40 years of your life as an important economic actor in your beautiful country. And thanks a lot for sharing this with our audience. And also it was for me personally very interesting, and also to see the development, and also your very powerful and positive motivation and future for a EU and NATO member of the Republic of Kosovo. I think that what we should all work together to achieve.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll
And you
do my
see,
best.
from the village here in Austria and the
Yes.
border to Czech Republic to the village in Kosovo and the border to Macedonia and Serbia, where you are, the internet has connected us very beautifully. So digitalization is the future, definitely.
Yes. Thanks to SMEs.
The SMEs, it's
Internet
driving.
service provider is SME.
Absolutely. Jobs, growth, prosperity via SMEs. Now I will leave you because I'm sure your wife will already wait with the dinner for you. And also best regards to your family from Austria. And thanks a lot for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. My
I will
best.
stop recording now.